Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to Draft Day Sports College Basketball. This is episode number 40. 40 is a good, nice round number. Plus, we're into an off season here where it makes a lot of sense to do a little check in on where we're at with this series. Right now, our all time record is 121 wins, 65 losses. We are approaching a 2 out of every 3 game win ratio. Approaching. We're not quite there yet, but there's a very good chance that we could hit that this season, as we've been well above that in recent years. And of course, that first 2 seasons we had an awful record through there. So it's taken a while to overcome that, but we're doing really good. 3 conference championships on our way, and of course now a single Sweet 16 appearance. We're up to a team prestige of 13 from nothing. So that's really cool. Conference prestige also climbing. And of course, we have not been labeled into the new conference just yet. You would imagine that's going to push up to 15, 16 by this point as we continue that climb. Of course, the facilities are still awful. D+ rating. We have made zero progress on that. We've had, in terms of requesting of the board, only a single success in the series so far, and that was a slightly increased budget. Right now, our starting budget is at 133, so we still very, very much need to continue to improve that budget. Short term, though, I think those facilities really need to come up if we're going to make further gains. We need to get those up to, into that C range. But anyway, the other thing that needs updating is the arena capacity. Now, if you remember back to the beginning of the series, the arena capacity is tied directly to channel support, as in the number of subscribers. And it's been only about 3 weeks, maybe 4, since I updated this last. I don't remember what the day itself was. But we have an increase of just over 400, which is more than 10% of that arena capacity in a very short period of time. A lot of that, of course, was due to the recent release of Pro Cycling Manager 2022, in which I draw the majority of the channel's audience. This, a lesser title, lesser known title. Good support. Thank you for being here, but not quite the same sort of numbers, and definitely not the same growth. But yeah, 38, 78 now, that will be updated, and we have even more seats, which helps. But I don't actually think it means anything in this game whatsoever. What the arena capacity is, it's still just a cool thing to do along the way. We're into the awards for this past season. Johnson, Love, and Ed Holt, all 3 of them have made first team all conference honors. It's the first I've seen, I think, to have 3 players. I know I've had a couple before, but I don't think I've ever had 3. Despite that, we still do not win Player of the Year, but that also not entirely surprising, as we had 3 dominant players that shared the load, and then we also had, at least one other very good player behind that. That combination led to spreading things out a little bit, spreading ourselves a little thinner by having that combination. So to me, it makes a little bit of sense, at least, that the top award goes to somebody else's player. But William Love does win Defensive Player of the Year. And then, of course, I get Coach of the Year as well on top of that one. And like I was talking about a little bit ago, as we're approaching that 667, that win 2 out of 3 lifetime win percentage, you can see this season how that helped draw us closer. 27-8 this year. That's a 771, so a whole 10% above that range. But it's hard to climb above that unless you're winning all your games, when we were losing a whole lot of games early on. Those anomalies that are really poor records take many, many years to kind of overcome those anomalies. And we had 2 of those, in those first 2 years. So we're getting there, but not quite yet. Maybe next season. We're into the staff hiring period, and our second assistant job is available for me. That is our practice coach. Player development is more important than the offensive defensive coaching for me, as I appreciate the long-term development of players as opposed to just the instant here now. But it does matter a lot less with transfer portals, than it has in past years. Now that the game has shifted quite a bit to those transfers. So, it might not be a terrible thing to get somebody who's a little bit mixed. But anyway, the first guy we're going to go after is Cameron Jefferson for the high player development. It really drops off after that. The minimum's a 20. The maximum available is a 30 outside of Jefferson. So if we can't get Jefferson, we might look to somebody who is good at, like, say, coaching defense. But that is my strong suit, so maybe I'll get somebody who can complement that and coach offense. Budget, of course, is a big constraint for us, but we're going to try to offer $30,000. After this, I think we're going to be able to drop down a bit. You can see that nobody's really asking for more or much more than he is on the list, and he does have a higher reputation than, that whole list available. So we'll go ahead and make that offer, but I'm not sure we'll be able to get him signed either way. All right, he has taken the jobs, so we got our man for $30K a year for 3 years. Here is that opportunity for the meeting with the board. We've only succeeded once, but after a Sweet 16 appearance, you would think now is a good time to get something. I'm needing those facilities upgraded more than the budget, but that budget, we really need that one too. We'll try the facilities this year. Request approved. There you go. We have a facility upgrade coming. I don't care how little of an upgrade. It can't get much worse than D+. I'm not even sure if anybody has F ratings in this game. So we've gone from the worst to, hey, we got something going. So I'm looking forward to see where that actually puts us. But now that we are getting that first upgrade out of the way, even if it's minor, we can focus on upgrading the finances for the next handful of years until we can get another upgrade or two in that department, as we can't hardly afford our staff, and we definitely can't hardly afford to do any recruiting with the staff that we're taking on, no matter how low level that staff is. By the way, the team's new prestige, 1.5 stars, 22 out of 100. So we've got +9 with that Sweet 16 appearance. Final Four appearance. Okay, so new tournament history, right? We only had the one Sweet 16. I thought we did that in the first season. I was like, huh? What? I forgot we got all the way to the Final Four. Gosh, I just got back from vacation. And I'm under the weather. Not COVID, though, fortunately. But B, we got in late last night. Didn't get a whole lot of sleep. Trying to get things done now, today, and trying to catch up on the world, which was quite busy during the last 5 days. A lot happened. I'm a long ways from caught up on things, but I am now caught up on hey, we got to Sweet 16 in that first year in the tournament. That was our third year overall in the series, and now we just had a Final Four appearance, which brought our team prestige up significantly with that, and our new facilities are a C. So we've gone essentially +2. We've gone from D+ to C- to C. So it pushed it up 2 levels and made it a lot more tolerable now. It's still not good by any stretch of the imagination. A C is not good, but we could actually get a little bit of training, especially with a good player development coach. We might actually see some of the guys start to achieve potential a little bit more. Of course, my player development also plays a factor in that one. We'll have to check on how we're looking there. So my reputation is still poor, but it's got to be coming up, right? Recruiting, now a 38. Scouting, still a 2. It's really annoying. I feel like I'm going to have to manually adjust that at some point. After all these years, it's literally gained 1 point. 29 in player development. That's got to be helping at least a little bit. 22 on the offensive skills, 28 on the defensive skills. I'm starting to reach the levels of my staff. Remember, we started, ones across the board. We were at literally nothing, and even the worst staff starts at 20s. So we were well below that. Not the case anymore. And of course, that recruiting, outside of the scouting anyway, that recruiting being at a 38 is starting to get up there. But we've still got a long ways to go to actually be formidable in the higher conferences, in the higher divisions, climbing that ladder. For now, we've got to keep climbing that ladder. Expecting another Final Four anytime soon is very, very unlikely. We, I think, got largely lucky on who we faced. We had a couple big-time teams that just were a little off this year in the most difficult conference. And yes, they're very solid, very good. But it was clear that they didn't have those star players. And then we got really lucky with a couple of opponents that were lower ranked and did enough in those to actually win fairly comfortably. We were definitely better than the other teams in the lower tier. And we would be, in real life, there is conference movement. Honestly, I would think at this point, with the kind of run we've had, 3 conference titles in the last 4 years, a Final Four bid, we would have had multiple mid-major conferences asking us to join their conference. Not knowing what conference would really be in real life, starting from the bottom, that it's some really, really small conferences that do not perform particularly well. But conference movement is a thing. It does happen. USC, UCLA, case in point on that one right now. Texas, and who's going with them? Oklahoma, was it? Anyway, some big teams are moving, but a lot of other teams move as well. It is absolutely a thing. And those mid majors, looking at regionally where we're at, who does Gonzaga play for? It's like MAC or something. What is their conference even? But I wouldn't be surprised if you had the Midwestern or the MAC or Mountain West, like any of those conferences. Now, I'm not totally up to par on my mid-major conferences. When it comes to basketball, I'm a little more attuned to college football, and they should, for the most part, be the same conferences, but they're not. I mean, there's far more Division I college basketball programs than there are in the other sports. So you've got teams that compete in basketball as a Division I program, but not elsewhere. And so where do they play? Where do they align? How many conferences have teams that realistically only have basketball in their pedigree? Well, your guess is as good as mine. And some of you probably know a lot better than I do, as opposed to, actually guessing as I'm trying to do. So with just a single official recruit, even though it's a good one, we're going to be pretty low on the list here, you would imagine, and we are inside the top 300 at least, but not by far. We're at 281. So it is fairly low on the list, but again, transfer portal is a strong way to go with that one. Promotion relegation results, funny thing here, means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, but it's just nice. Here's the bottom end of the list of your relegated / promoted teams, right? And who's going up, who's been relegated, and we are finally above the list, as in we're above the bottom page of the list. You have to scroll up to reach where we're at on this list now, because that's a lot of teams moving up and down. That's Wisconsin, Florida, Villanova, Kansas going down. Illinois, Ohio State, North Carolina State, West Virginia going up to Conference A. Big deal. Big thing. Duke is being relegated to Conference C. Wow. The mighty have fallen. And we're still nowhere near that list. But going up with us, James Madison, South Carolina Upstate, Navy. Coming down to join us, North Carolina Central, Bethlehem, Uh, Worcester Boiling Springs. Okay. There's going to be some teams, I would imagine, as we climb this ladder that are still in need of name updates. I've picked up a few more out of the comment section, so thank you to the multiple viewers that are stepping up and helping out with that process. We're starting to get pretty well set the bottom end of the reputation teams. We're also starting to get the highest end of the reputation teams under control, but the whole middle ground is far from being down. I mean, is Moon Township really a program? Maybe. There's 300 and something of them, and I just don't know them all. There's some other conferences. Being a U of O grad, being a Oregon alumnus, that's got me in that situation where the big conferences, I know them well. I know my regional collegiate programs fairly well. Anything outside the ones that are the regional for elsewhere, yeah, I don't know them. I don't know left from right with those guys, so just being honest with that. Disappointing news: Keith McNeil, our top backup at center, which was a really strong position. Ed Holt did not graduate, by the way, so of our big three, he's back. But Keith McNeil had a great chance to become the starting power forward for us to play alongside Ed Holt for this season, but he's left. I would imagine his lack of happiness had largely to do with playing time. He wasn't a starter this last season, but that does mean we have one more slot to fill, and ultimately means we have to fill one player at every position. We've already recruited a shooting guard. That's going to be the only position we don't need. I did not need a center because we had McNeil, but without him, we now need that as well. The remaining roster is, well, it's quite thin at this point. Ed Holt, still there, the powerhouse. Pete McPherson seems to be the most dominant player that we have left on the roster besides him. Mike Harris apparently looking better. Joe Williamson. Penders? I'm surprised Penders is not looking better than that, but okay. How are we looking defensively? Ryan Fall has made some improvement, but of course this always changes as soon as the season starts. But defensively, we've got four guys capable of providing us some decent minutes. Penders, Fall, Hold, Williamson. Williamson, the guy we just recruited, 1.5-star guy. So realistically, with how Williamson is, I figure we're going to have to use our 4 slots on the 4 best players that we can get, just as long as there are 4 different positions. Maybe we do avoid a center for now, as we will have Ed Holt and Myron Hammond, and then focus on it next year on replacing that solidly, as, well, we have one starter caliber player. That's it. My first target is going to be Eric Reed. Eric Reed is a point guard walk-on at Memphis, 3.5, 4-star kind of guy, and he's got a good work ethic. He's not friendly, but that's, it's not terrible. Defensive ability of 48 fits right into my system. He's lacking in a few places, especially as a guard. As a guard, you would expect a little bit more in the passing ball handling department. I don't think he would necessarily translate into the best guy, but with the discipline, the court IQ, the athleticism, and fairly good defensive ability, I do think he would be a fairly nice fit to our program. Maybe. Certainly can't be much worse than Mike Harris, right? And if Arizona, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas A&M are all looking at him, then hopefully he's a good fit for us. Next big target that I'm after, this is one I'm really hoping we can get. Gray Rainey is a power forward at Gonzaga, but he's a walk-on, so no scholarship. Apparently they don't have room to give him a scholarship, which makes a certain amount of sense, but this 4-star talent does it all decently well for us anyway. I mean, for us, he would be a pretty dang good player, so we'll see if we can get in. Great. First round of player transfers are in, and we are 0 for 4 so far. I don't know if any of the 4 have already signed with any other players. From first glance, we'll have to look a little further into it. Meanwhile, I've been scouting the shooting guard position and looking primarily for capable scorers out of there, and then see who can also defend, of course. So Gray Rainey is still available, and we've gone from non-existent to number 2 on his list. It looks like we are competing directly with UNLV to get him. Arizona was already listed but has fallen off, so maybe Arizona isn't interested in him. But we will continue to go after Gray Rainey and hopefully get him signed. I think he's probably the biggest signing we might get out of the... So after scouting Eric Reed, he doesn't quite look as good, just a 3-star kind of guy, but he has excellent defensive ability. Well, excellent for us. Defensive ability, not the greatest ball handler. Now we look at him as a 3-star instead of a 3.5-star guy. That, I think, makes a little more sense for this junior walk-on out of Memphis, but still seems like he would be a pretty solid pickup for us. I'm just not 100% convinced that I need to get after him as aggressively as before. Eric Reed, Barry Houston, and Alex Rice have all accepted scholarships. Gray Rainey unfortunately went to UNLV. That was the guy that I really wanted to get. So unfortunate on that one. We miss out there on the big-time player. But still having decent transfers at least at the moment. On first glance, the entire group that I've brought in is good. I don't know if that's going to stay the case once we actually get into the season, but we added Eric Reed, 3 stars at least for the moment, point guard, who is a good defender, not the best ball handler, which of course you need at point guard, but Mike Harris, who's been the starter this last season, isn't good enough at all, and Eric Reed is a pretty significant upgrade, especially on the defensive side. Shooting guard, we of course have true freshman Joe Williamson coming in, but he's looking like he may not be ready, though certainly semi-capable as a defender. But Barry Houston, who we have added, looks like he's going to be a contender to start alongside maybe McPherson or possibly really all 4 shooting guards that I have are potential starters with a couple seniors and a couple underclassmen. Houston, just a sophomore coming in. Eric Reed is a junior, so he is an upperclassman, but Houston's going to offer some really good defense, and that's obviously a center of what we try to do here, so he's going to help us in that department. Where Ryan Fall's still not looking that good, Alex Rice, the new addition at small forward, is looking to be an excellent starter candidate. Defensively, yeah, he's similar to Ryan Fall, but he is going to do a whole lot more, maybe in other departments. Certainly a better free throw shooter, better ball handler and distributor, better defensive rebounding, and offensive rebounding, so a much better rebounder, a better blocker, better steals. So, that coupled with the individual defense being almost on par, you could see how he's a bit better than Ryan Fall, but I wouldn't say significantly. So when we see the reevaluation, I don't think he's necessarily going to be a 4-star guy. He might be a 2.5-star kind of guy. And then 2 new power forwards, Marcus Cooper and Paul Lindquist. Lindquist, we don't know what his outside jumpers are like, but Cooper, good inside scorer, very good with the ball. He's a 4-star kind of guy, where Lindquist was the second choice that came a little bit later in what we had in options. Neither one of them is great on defense, but they're not terrible. They can kind of hold their own, but Cooper looks like he's going to be a pretty strong offensive asset. And then, of course, Ed Hold still at center. We did not add a center, so Myron Hammond, and that's 2 seniors there. We're still going to have a number of vacancies come next season. Harris, Penders, McPherson, Fall, Hammond, and Hold. 6 seniors. So pretty big turnover again come next season. I do think a couple of these guys are going to be different once we reevaluate, but I do think we have retooled fairly well for this season. Now, the rest of the offseason I will handle in due time and get us into the preseason soon enough. But we continue to climb the ranks, and it looks like, at least on the surface, I'd say outside of one of these guys probably is going to be reclassified a bit lower. It does look like we're going to be in fairly good shape. Replacing Johnson's scoring, Marcus Cooper looks to be the guy who's going to kind of pick that up. And of course, Ed Hold, who's, got that 96 inside. He's just happens to only be a 19 on scoring. Barry Houston is a 30 on scoring, so he looks to take the most shots. We'll see how that outside jumper is. Is it really 100, or is it 80 or 90? Hopefully it is in that 80-90 plus sort of range where he's got a really good outside shot, so he could be your stretch 2 who's going to help provide a lot of outside scoring for us, which of course is key to what we do. So shooting guard looks a little bit wide open. I think Eric Reed's going to take over as starting point guard most likely. Alex Rice is definitely taking over as starting small forward, as Ryan Fall just does not look good enough. Hopefully he does develop some here during the offseason or preseason. Cooper looks to be better than Lindquist, but you never know until we get both of them in sight. And, they've got a couple of these guys placed above Ed Hold. I just don't think that's going to actually be the case once we reevaluate. I think Ed Hold's going to be our 4-star kind of guy, and we're going to have a number of 3.5-star guy kind of guys. Maybe Cooper is close, but that's going to be a good post pairing. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode on Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.